And my first thing would be follow the money. Who's saying that? And what do they have to gain from saying that this tool is changing their lives? And then second of all, this goes back to that same carpenter analogy that I made before. If you don't have a strategy and a plan to do the work, then that tool is going to be useless.
Welcome to the Leadership Cafe podcast. Today we are speaking with Lacey Reichwald from AHA Media Group, and we are really excited about the conversation. She's a director of marketing at AHA Media, and she leads brand and content strategy and helps connect healthcare marketers with resources they need to succeed. Lacey's an accomplished B2B marketer, and she has a background in entrepreneurship. You can see that when you hear her talk. She's very innovative and creative, and we love that. And she brings a strong instinct and love of strategy to everything she does. And that is part of our mutual kindred spirit, that love of strategy.
Yes.
Lacey is also a trusted voice on how AI is shaping content workflows and search behavior and how marketers can adapt with purpose. Outside of work, she loves books, board games, and being out in nature, which is all good things away from the computer. We love that. And today we're going to talk a little bit about how businesses sometimes will lean on AI or tech to cover up a bad strategy. And I'm excited to get into that. We're going to talk about some practical uses for AI, how to integrate it wisely and ethically into your department. And we're going to talk specifically about healthcare and where in the journey do patients trust AI and what considerations you need to make for that. So Lacey, thank you so much for being here. I'm very excited. I first saw you speak 2 years ago now at MashMed, which is a regional conference for healthcare marketers, and I loved your presentation. In fact, it was one of the very first presentations in healthcare AI that I had seen that was specific to healthcare, and I love the direction you brought around ethically and responsibly using AI. In fact, you said one thing in that presentation that I have repeated numerous times about is AI is like 10,000 interns. Are they helpful? Yes, they can get a lot of work done, but should they be left alone? No, they should not. No. And I love that frame because it's very, very practical for AI. It's nothing to be scared of. It's a really helpful tool, but we also have to be responsible to manage and supervise it. So we're going to talk about that.
Yeah, I've even sort of updated that in recent presentations to talk about, AI as a tool. And I think, the intern analogy is great because I think that's like the level of work that it can do for you and with you. It needs supervision, it needs great instructions, it needs training. But I also think that sometimes people then will assume that it has a lot more autonomy than it does. And in reality, it's a tool. And so what I've been saying is, a hammer can help you build a house, but the hammer is only as good as the carpenter that's using it.
Yes.
And so when you are using AI, think of it as a tool. Now, the difference is that I think AI is more like a nail gun, right?
Yeah.
It can go a lot faster and do a lot more work in a short amount of time than a hammer can. But then I feel like you need an even more skilled carpenter to sort of wield that power. So I've really been thinking of it more as a tool, and more I think about how it's the person using it than it is the tool itself.
So it's so smart. I love that. And I think that also takes a little bit of the fear factor out of it. I mean, people are either in it or want to be. And so I feel like this conversation is really for the AI curious who haven't dove in yet. But there's a lot of them. Our agency serves nonprofits and rural health. And I saw a stat that said Like 93% of them want to use AI and only 23% are. So this conversation is kind of just to help give that smart and the strategic use case for AI. But I love the very first question. But before we go there, since we're
All
in the
right.
cafe, I wanted to just say, tell us about your favorite mug or your favorite drink in the mug.
So my favorite mug is so practical. This is my, it's like
Your REI, yeah.
stainless steel, warm. It's just to keep my coffee warm. It's from REI. It also reflects my love of nature. I love to hike and backpack, so often this mug is on a carabiner on the back of my hiking backpack.
Nice.
And it just has regular old coffee in it. I tend to drink black coffee, but it's winter, almost winter, fall into winter season, and that's when I feel a little bit cozy. So I've got a little sweet cream in there today to feel
Nice.
cozy. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, mine is from a small maker, female business, fair trade from third world country. This I have a little set of mugs from her. It's got these
Oh,
little
nice.
designs on it.
It's
And it's
beautiful.
actually water because girls got to get cut off from coffee for the rest of today,
This
or
is
I
the
will talk too fast.
yeah, this is the dregs of my second cup, and that's all I need. That's
Yeah.
my limit.
Yeah. So, anyway, cheers. Thanks for being here. We're excited to have you. So, Lacey, tell us a little bit about your job path and kind of how you ended up where you're at talking about
Yeah.
AI. I noticed that you're in a lot of conferences, and this topic is something that you're touching on in a lot of places. So, when did you get here or get involved, or why did you get involved in the AI conversation?
I ask myself that every day.
Yeah.
um, I took sort of a zigzaggy path to get into healthcare marketing, but I think that the sort of through thread of my whole career is that I like to be on the forefront of innovation. I spent the first 14 years of my career as an entrepreneur. I owned a coffee shop that then expanded to add a cafe, and then we had a second location with a bakery, and all of that happened sort of around the same time that social media was rising to influence. And in fact, I had a Facebook account before you could get one unless you were a student. And then as soon as Facebook accounts were open to non-students, I set up a profile for my coffee shop. And that was
Mhm.
before they had business profiles. So my
Nice.
coffee shop was a person,
Mhm.
and I used it for communicating with my community and my customers. And I just saw social media as this new sort of way to market and communicate to folks. And so I was kind of all in on that. And I see AI as being similar, especially in how quickly it's changing marketing. We've seen so many changes in social media since then. Now it's so monetized, and it's really hard to get uh,
Mhm.
any kind of organic traction in social media. And I think that we'll probably see something similar as AI continues to develop and companies figure out how to monetize it in more effective ways. But really, that's, I think it's just curiosity. And then I have a very strong sort of ethic around learning out loud. I think that it's really important. I do not like gatekeeping. I think it's very important to share what you know and what you're learning with others to keep everybody on the same level and encourage folks who are maybe afraid to try something new or to start that, hey, like we're all on this journey. We may be in different parts of this journey, but we're all there.
Mhm.
And I think with technology and AI in particular, there can be a group of gatekeepers who try to
Mhm.
make it sound scarier than it is.
Mhm.
And I don't want to be a part of that. So
Right.
that's really how I just, through experimenting, trial and error, and then sharing what I'm learning.
That's so great. I love that. And we have an online community called the Leadership Cafe, and it's exactly that. We aren't gatekeeping anything. It's all our templates, it's our tools, it's our resources, it's the things we've developed in our work over 20 years, but also that some of the tools we use with our clients, which people are like, "Why are you doing that?" I'm like, "We've done this a long time, and there's no need to create wheels. There's a lot of wheels already."
Yeah.
Okay, so I love that learning out loud. And again, like I said, there's that curiosity, that entrepreneurial spirit that you see. And I love that you brought that to healthcare marketing because it's needed. Healthcare's kind of lags a little bit from the rest of industry. And so I've always found that that kind of curiosity to explore and look around and figure everything's figure outable, but
Yes.
that spirit to lean forward is truly what has brought the most success in any of the healthcare campaigns I've done. So love that concept. So I want to dive into this idea of how businesses sometimes will lean to tech like AI as kind of a little cover up for
Yeah.
not a very good strategy. Well, let's chat about that. Tell me what your thoughts are on that or what you've seen.
Yeah. I think it's like a shiny new object syndrome. Leadership sees this tool, they hear all these stories about how it's reducing costs and it's increasing efficiency and it's doing all these things. And my first thing would be follow the money. Who's saying that? And what do they have to gain from saying that this tool is changing their lives? And then, second of all, this goes back to that same carpenter analogy that I made before. If you don't have a strategy and a plan to do the work, then that tool is going to be useless. It's like slapping a band-aid on a broken arm. Like
Yeah.
it's not going to get you the results that you're hoping for. And I think that when you're starting to implement a tool or think about changes, that's a really good time to step back and ask yourself, what is the business goal that we're trying to achieve? And then what tools are available to help us solve that? Instead of saying, here's a tool, what problem can it solve?
Right,
I think that is backwards thinking.
right.
Um, this isn't AI, but it's so funny. It just came up in a conversation I had recently where someone was talking about how they were helping rebuild a website for a company. And
Hmm.
in the process of that, unearthed a lot of business challenges that then led to a completely new strategic plan for that business.
Hmm.
And it's sort of funny how you think about that sort of like end deliverable as unearthing all these issues, but really that's because that website or that AI tool or whatever it is that you're building and implementing should be stacked on top of strategy, not the other way around.
Oh, amen, girl. That's got to be louder for the one in the back.
Right? I know.
We see that all the time where people will be like, I need a rebrand or I need a new website or whatever. And to your point, shiny object syndrome, but what they really need is clarity in their strategy. Who are they serving? What are they delivering to those people and why? If you
Yes.
don't have clarity on that, there is no tool on the planet that's going to help you efficiently message that because so many times they think it's, well, I just need a new brand. It's like, no, you might just need to tighten your strategy and your messaging a little. And often that's the case with folks who come forward to us trying to get a whole new rebrand. And I'm sure AHA is like that as well, but we don't recommend things that people don't need. So
Yep.
we have
100.
this conversation a lot.
We do too. I think we surprise some people in sales calls when we tell them that we don't want to take their money
Yeah.
because I mean and on the agency side we want to do a good job. We
Right.
don't want to complete a project and not feel good about the outcome,
Right.
and so we do the same thing. We have folks come to us and ask us to write content, and then we dig in and ask what the strategy is behind the content, and we realize they don't have one. And so we say we need to start there. We
Mhm.
have to understand who you are, who your audience
Yes.
is, what you're trying to say before we can write the words.
Hmm.
And Yeah, and I understand, in healthcare, particularly smaller hospitals or rural
Yes.
hospitals,
Hmm.
and in the nonprofit world, we're like all hands on deck.
Yeah.
And we are like heads down getting the work done. And it's really hard to step back and take that
Right.
macro view. It takes a lot of time,
Hmm.
and I get it. But what I love about strategic work is that while it's, a strategy is a living and breathing object,
Hmm.
if you do it once and you do it really well, then it just takes little tweaks along the way. And
Right.
all of the work that you do from then on
Hmm.
is going to be easier, and you'll understand the purpose of it. Our CEO has a saying that structure can set you free. And I
Hmm.
really believe that to be true. Once you have the guardrails in place, you have a
Yeah.
lot more freedom to
Oh,
do
sure.
all the other things.
Yeah, and we say something similar where, an intelligent strategy makes all your decisions easier because then
Yeah.
you know what's for you and what's not for you. AI might not be for you. Uh, Epic or
Right.
Salesforce might not be for you. And I've met with rural hospital marketers who are like have no strategy and are buying Salesforce for every location, which is monumentally expensive.
So much money.
So
Yeah.
much money. And it's not that it's not a good product, but if a plan is not the same thing as a strategy, and
Right.
that's the thing. It's like a content calendar is not a strategy. it's
Correct.
it's a outflow of your strategy, and I think a lot of people get confused. You're right, in the small and solo teams especially. So
Yes.
yes. So I want to talk a little bit about healthcare specifically. And for those who are the AI curious, I'm calling them,
Yeah.
who haven't quite jumped in, what are some guidelines or thoughts about implementing AI responsibly and ethically so that
Yeah.
we don't get sideways? I mean, trust in healthcare is already at a risk, and people are growingly less and less trusting their doctors and the health systems. And so how do we do this in a way that doesn't further fracture that relationship with patients?
Yeah, I think first it starts with an internal conversation
Mhm.
about how you're going to use AI and sort of establishing those guardrails. Again, having some structure there can set you free, and determining, like, do we need a policy? Are there certain tools that we will or won't use?
Mhm.
I'll say no matter what your organization or your stance on policy is, there are a couple of things that I would never ever do, which is I would never put any kind of proprietary information into an AI tool that isn't already readily available on the internet. If
Mhm.
it's publicly facing on the internet, AI already has access to it.
Mhm.
But if it's not, like let's say you have like internal style guides or some kind of documentation, putting it into an open AI model, so any model that isn't a sort of closed system within your organization is training that AI on that documentation. So I wouldn't do that. Also, of course, PII, anything, or PHI, anything that can be tied back to a patient, 100% would never upload that. Sort of the rule I have is if you wouldn't put it on social media, don't put it in an AI engine.
Yeah.
Um, Now, there are some opportunities to do that in a closed network, as I mentioned. So a lot of people use Microsoft and Copilot, which is built into Microsoft. You
Mhm.
can have it set up so that it doesn't train
Mhm.
the anything outside of your organization.
Mhm.
And then also ChatGPT has sort of like a group membership. I think it's their enterprise level.
Mhm.
But at any level, even if you're using free ChatGPT, you can toggle off whether or not it's
Right.
training on that information. So
Yeah.
that's where I would start. Um, the other thing, just in terms of sort of ethics and being responsible, is I think that we have a obligation to let people know if we're creating something using AI,
Mhm.
if we're entirely, if we're
Right.
just from start to finish. Which I would also say we have an ethical obligation not to do that, honestly.
Yes.
There's a lot of AI slop out there. There's a
Yes.
lot of misinformation out there. And so, our recommendation to small teams who see AI as this awesome opportunity to create a lot of content very fast is create that first piece of content like you normally would as a human, written for humans,
Mhm.
doing your own research, and then go ahead and use AI to figure out how to repurpose that. You
Yeah.
know, take that big long form piece of content and upload it to a GPT that you have trained and say, pull out 3 blog topics or pull out 12 possible social media posts related to
Mhm.
this
Yeah.
and give yourself a jump start there, but not in creating the content that people rely on to,
Mhm.
they trust your organization that that's vetted content, and so
Right.
it should be human created.
Sure. I've heard some AI folks say, ChatGPT can't write your story for you. It can make it better. So what's your feeling on, taking a piece of content and say, tighten this up or make it, whatever.
Yeah,
What's your
I think that
experience with that?
I've had mixed experience with it,
Mhm.
honestly. It really depends on the prompt and how much information and context you give it. So it's
Sure.
going to do a much better job at that if you say, this is my audience,
Mm-hmm.
this is the goal of this piece, providing as much context as you can, and then saying, what's missing, or I have used it before to say tighten it up, especially if it's something that's not going to be patient facing. Let's say I'm sending a quick email and I've
Mm-hmm.
just rambled on and I just need help tightening that up so that it's not so long no one's going to read it.
Yeah.
But always, always, always read, edit before you publish, because
Yes.
AI can hallucinate. Even if you say don't add anything that isn't included in this original material, sometimes it will.
Mm-hmm.
So just always double check.
Yeah. Yeah. That's my experience as well, where, you tell it to just check for grammar or whatever, I mean, there's Grammarly and all the other AI tools that could do that for you, but I have seen that it's questionable on its ability to really help formulate it to represent your brand well. And I think that that's important. I also feel like if everybody's just having AI create all their content, now you're just the same in a different hemisphere instead of everybody talking about the same things now that are mass produced for healthcare brands. I think that there's always an opportunity for authenticity and some unique point of view or something. And obviously, if it's a heart healthy recipe, that's not going to be too personalized.
Right.
But I do feel like in healthcare, especially, there is just so much mass content that you can buy, and everybody looks exactly the same. It's like if you could swap the logo off of your ad or post or whatever, and nobody would even know the difference, then that's where I feel like we have the risk of going if we just ask AI to write all our content, because it's
Yeah,
going to just be a
absolutely.
new flavor of that.
Yeah, I think that healthcare in particular already suffered from a
Yes.
sea of sameness.
Hmm.
Everybody's
Yes.
colors are about the same, websites look the same.
Yeah.
But now with AI, it's so much easier. And one of my favorite sort of thought leaders in this space, Andy Crustadina, always says that AI stands for the average of the internet, because
Mhm.
it's just taking in all of this information and then spitting out sort of the average based on predictive
Mhm.
generation. And so if we're all using the same tools, then we're all going to get the same results, unless you really understand how to make it your own, which is, through training GPTs and
Sure.
uploading and, providing that additional context about your organization, your audience, what makes it local, but then also still going to those local voices, having your doctors and your patients and your, other clinicians or other staff members be a part of the conversation. Like a heart healthy recipe, yes, you can do that, anywhere. But, in Wisconsin, where I am, a way to enjoy cheese curds in a heart
Yes.
healthy way is a very different conversation than somewhere else, right? So, like, make
Right.
it local, make it unique and creative. That's what's going to help you stand out.
I love cheese is my love language.
I do. I
I'm
do.
like, I love cheese. You ever
Yeah.
need a favor from me? If it comes packed with cheddar around it, you got it for sure. I love cheese. That's what I love about Wisconsin. Yeah, awesome. So when we're taking it one step further in healthcare, when we're talking about patients and getting content in front of them, what are you seeing in terms of where patients or maybe even providers are trusting of AI? And do you have any thoughts or observations on where we should stay away?
Yeah, we just ran a study alongside Klein and Partners and released the findings of it earlier this month.
Mm,
And the study was we surveyed 1,000 people, healthcare decision makers,
mhm,
so households, people in households who are making healthcare decisions as patients,
mhm,
and asked them a series of questions about where they're searching for healthcare information,
mhm,
if they're aware of some content being AI generated. In particular, most patients are still searching Google.
mhm,
Some are going to ChatGPT or some other AI tools to
mhm,
ask questions, but most are going straight to Google. But that doesn't mean they're not avoiding AI, because now for anywhere from 60 to 80% of healthcare queries, you're going to get an AI overview at the
mhm,
top of the
mhm,
search engine result page, and that's an AI generated response that's right there on Google. So we asked folks, do you know that this is AI generated? 73% of people do know that,
mhm.
so I think that's
Good.
great. They're aware that it's AI, but then we wanted to know, do you trust it? And it's sort of split into three sort of groups of folks. So we have the skeptics. I think it
Mhm,
was like 32, 33%. They're all
mhm,
really close to a third. Um, they hate AI. They say they will always hate AI. They say it's evil. They don't want any part of that being involved in their healthcare. They do not trust it.
yeah.
And then there's another third that's sort of a pragmatist, and they say, trust but verify. So
Mhm,
if it was written by AI, summarized by AI, but there's a doctor backing it up, or
mhm,
there's an option for me to speak to a human, then I'll trust it.
mhm,
And then there's sort of this like efficiency group who does not care. They don't care if it's human or robot as long as it's quick and it's accurate.
mhm,
They still want
mhm.
accuracy. So, what I would say is you have sort of those three groups, and it sounds like it would be really hard to make them all happy, but in reality, you just sort of have to take a dual pathway, which is provide quick and easy answers for people, and also humanize and go a little bit deeper, farther down, so that people understand, this was vetted by a doctor. I can get more of a human story. I can click here to call a nurse. And that's what we found so far in terms of AI search. Now, in terms of creating content using AI, I actually just read something interesting that, posting or sharing openly that you use AI actually reduces trust, which I thought was really interesting. And I think it's probably mostly that third group that they're like, I don't care, just get me the answer. They would rather not know. So I think internally organizations have to decide, how much are we gonna use AI? What are we gonna use it for? Are we gonna share it on every single piece of AI written content? Or are we just gonna post our AI policy once that shares where we may or may not use it? And I think that that has to be an internal conversation.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point. And I know since I saw you a couple of years ago, we created an AI policy because you didn't gatekeep. You
Yeah.
shared your sample.
Yep, it's on our website, ahamediagroup.com. Feel free to
Yeah,
look it up.
yeah. And we'll put the link in the show notes as well.
Okay.
But I think it's so interesting. I saw a stat. I was reading a study on healthcare consumers, and it said that just under 40%, I think, of providers and patients were interested in AI in healthcare only to the extent that it could improve the process. And I think around scheduling, getting an appointment easier, getting communication like through, my chart or summaries or help, any kind of resource that would make healthcare more efficient, again, to that efficiency thing. And
Yeah.
that was really driven by generational kind of differences. Did your study look at that at all?
It did, yeah. We saw the same thing. Trust and interest in AI declines with age.
Mm-hmm.
So Gen Z is really leading the trust and comfort level here, which
Mm-hmm.
makes sense. They're digital natives. They're used to getting their answers from computers since
Mm-hmm.
birth. So that went down. We also saw that men tend to be more comfortable and trusting of AI results than women,
Interesting.
and that also higher education and higher socioeconomic status were correlated with more trust and comfort. And we also, we broke it down by task and found something similar to your point about sort of where AI is
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
acceptable. Folks are much more comfortable with it when it comes to refilling a prescription or appointment reminders, things that are sort of low risk, low stakes.
Mm-hmm.
But we went all the way through to how comfortable, or actually the question was, AI is more accurate at diagnosis than a human doctor, was the question. And what was stunning here was how quickly this has gone up. Last year, 9% of people said that
Right.
that was true, and this year it was 22% of people
Wow.
said it
Wow.
was true. So um, it's growing quickly. Trust overall in AI is growing quickly, and especially as you move to those sort of more high risk, which
Yeah.
I think there have been some really good PR campaigns for
Mm-hmm.
some diagnostic tools that have,
Mm-hmm.
there's been tons of news articles about how AI is really effective at detecting breast cancer early,
Mm-hmm.
through mammograms that humans would have missed. And so I think that that's probably adding to the conversation. But yeah, trust is growing.
Yeah, that's interesting. That is a big shift from one year to the other. The
Yeah.
other study that I love and have followed for 9 years now, and they've just moved from an annual study to a quarterly study, is Monocle has a humanizing brand experience, and they have a specific healthcare study that they're now releasing quarterly, and it really dives into trust and
Yeah.
what are the drivers of choice in healthcare. And so I love I love that work as well. I'm excited to look up your study and find it.
Yeah.
We're at
And I
in the
can.
leadership cafe.
Yeah, we can share that in the show notes too. And to that point, Rob Klein from Klein and Partners and I, we initially talked about running this study annually, and we decided we have to do it at least every 6 months
Right.
because of how quickly things are changing. I
Yes.
mean, we're just seeing exponential change at this stage.
Yeah. And I feel like, like we're working on some rural health things. I feel like that whole factor, and then you add on the stress of what's going on geopolitically and
Regulation.
financially, administration changes, the funding. I feel like when you layer all those pieces on for rural health, that I wonder if sometimes people don't know how to sort what they don't trust, if that makes sense. And then there's this growing a Gen Z, and these studies are by far the least trusting of healthcare of all generations.
Right, and the most trusting of AI.
Mm,
So, Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of work to be done and it can feel overwhelming.
Sure.
But I do think, I've heard the word a couple of times in this conversation. It's the human part,
Hmm.
humanizing healthcare, humanizing the individual healthcare journeys of folks and the way that we talk with them and communicate with them. I
Hmm.
think it's going to be the difference as we
Yeah,
move forward.
I do too. Well, I'm just so grateful for you joining us today. I know it was a quick conversation. We probably could chat for many cups of coffee. But how should people find you if they want to learn more or follow your content or whatever? We'll put it in the show notes, but I like
Yeah.
to say it for the people just listening.
Sure. So I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, Lacey
Mhm.
Reichwald. Feel free to follow me or send me a connection request there. I publish a newsletter on my LinkedIn called AI Tool Tips. It's supposed to be twice a month. Now it's kind of whenever I learn a new tip. Or feel free to reach out directly, Lacey at ahamediagroup.com. And yeah, I know we'll put that in the show notes. So
Awesome. Well, I know that your materials, I follow your posts on LinkedIn and they're always super helpful and insightful. So it's worth a follow for sure.
well, thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you for joining us for Leadership Cafe podcast. If you enjoyed this session, you'd like to hear more, follow us. The session is available on Apple and on Spotify. And if you like it, leave a review. Everyone matters and makes a difference for us. So thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you.